Most people think of the AP Stylebook as just a grammar guide. I think of it as a time capsule. Every year, AP editors gather together to update the book. Enough editions in and you start to see patterns. What people are arguing about, what technology is rearranging daily life, which cultural habits have stopped being niche and started being normal. The AP Stylebook isn't telling people how to speak. It's trying to keep up with how people are already speaking. Think of AP editors as professional eavesdroppers. They're listening for the words people reach for in real conversations, especially when the words matter because the underlying debates are heating up. When something becomes part of everyday speech, it often ends up in the AP Stylebook. And millions of journalists end up using that same shared vocabulary. That's why news articles across outlets can feel very familiar. One of my favorite examples is when Twitter became X. Suddenly journalists had to decide how to talk about tweets, retweets, and the platform itself. AP didn't pick a side. It tried to help readers understand what was happening and to keep the language consistent and accurate. Which brings us to this year. So if you read through the updates, a portrait of America starts to emerge. Clearer, sharper, and a little stranger than I think we all expected. This year's edition includes entries on AI slop, vibe coding, healthcare, immigration, and jumpscare. Taken together, they sketch an unusually vivid snapshot of the United States and the world at large in 2026. Let's start with artificial intelligence. One of the new entries is AI slop. This is the term for the flood of low-quality, mass-produced, AI-generated content spreading across the internet. Sometimes it's obvious, a bizarre AI image, a celebrity deepfake. Other times it's harder to spot, generic articles, recycled explainers, content produced at such scale that you start to wonder whether a human was involved at all. The Stylebook also adds entries for AI agents, AI chips, compute, data centers, and vibe coding. Vibe coding is one of the most intriguing additions because it points to a shift in how people do work. We're seeing this play out right now. Instead of writing every line of code yourself, you describe what you want, and the AI helps you build it. On paper, that's a technical update. In real life, it's a work update. For decades, making software generally required coding knowledge. Now AI is lowering that barrier exponentially, letting more people create things that once demanded specialized expertise. So when vibe coding shows up in the AP Stylebook, it's a signal. This isn't just a tech industry trend, it's bleeding into mainstream language, into ordinary conversations about what work is becoming. And if AI is about information, the next big update is about accusation and definition. This year, one of the most significant and sensitive changes involves the word genocide. AP is essentially telling journalists to be very careful with the term. Unless genocide has been formally recognized by a court or an international body, reporters are advised to tell readers who's making the accusation rather than presenting it as established fact. That might sound small, but it's not. It's a debate journalists, historians, legal scholars, and policymakers have wrestled with for years and are wrestling with now. Even Ezra Klein, a New York Times podcast host, asked a simple question that turns out to be brutally complicated, dedicating an entire episode. What does genocide really mean? And you can see the same challenge elsewhere in the Stylebook. The immigration updates add guidance around terms like self-deportation and asylum seeker, plus clearer distinctions between human trafficking and human smuggling. Those aren't just semantics. They shape how a story gets understood and what kind of moral and legal conclusions readers walk away with. There's also new guidance around Native Americans and Indigenous peoples. So AP created a separate entry because those identities aren't simply racial categories. They also involve citizenship, tribal nations, and sovereignty. No matter what your politics are, these aren't small wording choices. They reflect major policy debates, and they reflect the daily tightrope journalists face, trying to decide complicated issues clearly, precisely, and without accidentally turning claims into conclusions. That's one of the reasons I've always found the AP Stylebook so valuable. It gives journalists a starting point for tackling these complicated topics in a way that's consistent, readable, and comprehensible. But not every edition has the same weight. Some feel like the internet's slipping into the formal record. Like this new entry, jump scare. AP suggests writing it as one word. That might sound trivial until you realize what it's actually telling you. Gaming and internet culture didn't stay in its lane. It's moved into the mainstream, and the mainstream quickly becomes language. And that's the fascinating part. The entries reveal what journalists are being asked to cover more often than before. Artificial intelligence, immigration, identity, healthcare, internet culture, plus the growing obligation to explain all of it in public, in real time, using words that are accurate enough for serious issues, but flexible enough for how people actually talk. Whether you agree with AP's approach or bristle at it, the update is a reminder that this book isn't just about commas and semicolons and hyphens. It's about what's happening to the country's words and what happens to the country when the words start to change. If you want to take a look for yourself, the AP Stylebook is available at many public libraries and bookstores. I'd love to know if any entries jumped out at you that I didn't cover. Thanks for watching.